And we thought this was a very timely presentation because I don't know who among us passed our CFSRs and our state or our federal standards for timeliness to adoption. I also know we have a lot of waiting children for families. So we were looking at a couple of resources that perhaps we're not fully tapping at this point in time. We have Chris Padbury, who's joining us all the way from Colorado. Really appreciate your coming and joining us, Chris. He did this at his own expense, so I think we are very, very appreciative of that. Chris is going to be talking to us about Project 127, which is a faith-based public child welfare collaborative in Colorado. And I understand that it has also spread to some other states, and he will be sharing that as well. Chris is an adoptive parent himself. He's adopted, is it 5 children? 6 now. Oh, my goodness. And he and his wife have adopted internationally, independently, and from foster care. I don't think I missed any, right? And so we're really excited to hear about Project 127. Also on the agenda are Jill May and I, who will be speaking briefly, because we want to give the bulk of our time to Chris, about the All Children, All Families initiative, which is an initiative from the Human Rights Campaign, and it's recruiting families who are LGBT for our waiting children. And what we're going to do is Jill and I are going to start, and then we'll turn it over to Chris. Okay, the All Children, All Families initiative is out of the Human Rights Campaign. You have a promising practice guide. Looks like this, which is very, very helpful. It contains a lot of information on being a culturally competent agency. If anyone would like a guide, just let me know, and I'll see that you get one, because they really are very, very helpful. Oh, and here's 3 extras, so we can pass those down as well. The way that we're increasing the pool of adoptive families is by increasing the cultural competence in adoption agencies, in working with the LGBT community, as well as educating and recruiting in that community. And they've got it set up in a really cool way. I first heard about it because I heard that there was free advertising. And I was like really excited. Ooh, free advertising on recruitment. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way. You're right, Deborah. But it got me interested, and I contacted them to learn more about it. And what it is that agencies who are interested can sign a pledge. The pledge is in your guide, as well as online. And there are benchmarks on page, it's 89 in the old guide, 102 in the version that you have. There are 10 benchmarks that need to be met in order to get a seal. And this seal allows your agency to be placed on the Human Rights Campaign website, and also to receive this free advertising that I was targeting. So actually, we signed the pledge, LA County, in early spring, and we don't have our seal yet, but graciously they are going to give us some advertising next month. So what I did when I signed the seal and looked at the benchmarks, some of them are pretty easy, or at least in California, for us with the laws that we have, we could do. We started looking at the benchmarks. I formed a work group and included external folks as well, and developed a training plan for our staff. What we did is we focused on the division of adoption in LA County. We're really large. We have over 4,000 social workers. So that was a little bit too big to take on. But the adoption division is about 350, and that was a little more doable. We got the Gay and Lesbian Center to do training, and I had my own staff do training on the homesteading. So we've got that. We're almost at our seal, and we are going to be collecting data, because doing all this, I want to know, is it working? Are we in fact getting more families? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill to talk about what you're doing in Mexico.
In New Mexico, we have not signed the pledge. We hope to sign the pledge by the end of this year. The one thing that I really wanted to talk about is Diane got me involved with a group of folks that actually met in New Mexico sometime last spring. And I was sitting at the table with LA County, Alameda County, which is San Francisco, New York City, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, so these are communities that we think about being welcoming and affirming to gay people to begin with. Well, New Mexico, New Jersey was there, which was, I thought, somewhat more similar to our state. And those were also communities that were county-based, were not county-based. So I was sitting there and I was thinking about that, and I was like, how is this going to work for a state where we might have a couple of communities that are open, I wouldn't say welcoming and affirming to the gay and lesbian population, but that are maybe more gay friendly. So how is this going to work in our smaller communities, which there's a great deal of homophobia? And so when speaking with Diane and the HRC, we and I was thinking about this yesterday in relationship to leadership, and I was thinking about it that this has been an interesting undertaking for me, because I had to look at, okay, so who do I need to talk to get approval to sign the pledge? Are they maybe, I sit here and I know that this is not an easy issue for all of us to talk about, and that there's a lot of discrimination in this area. So I was sitting there and I was thinking, okay, I have to go to my director. I don't know what my director's issues are around gay, lesbian, bi, and transgender families. So I had to do a little bit of research, and I got my team together. I got my support group together. We actually in New Mexico have sort of an ongoing group that meets about promising practices and how to get those promising practices starting out in the field. So I took it to that group, and we all talked about it and strategized about it. And then I went to my director, and I was quite surprised, because I actually live in a community that is, we have a very high population of gay and lesbian folks, and so I thought this was a no-brainer. I thought that we already have a lot of gay and lesbian foster and adoptive parents in my community, that this wasn't a big deal. Well, what I did learn is that this is a very political issue, and what I thought was going to be, yeah, Jill, go ahead, let's do this. It has not been that. So and I was thinking about this, and because I think there's probably a lot of states out there that are probably more similar to New Mexico, that you may have pockets of areas that this would work, but you have pockets of areas that this may never work. So what we've been talking about doing is starting small and starting in those areas where we already have a population of gay and lesbian folks. And the one thing that we've done in our recruitment is we recruit at gay pride celebrations, and what we find when we do outreach to this community is they don't know that they can be foster parents. I mean, but I was doing some research online last night, and actually in every state except for Florida, at least a single parent can adopt. So this isn't that gay and lesbian people can't adopt in all of your states except for Florida. So I guess my recommendation would be is well, back to my point about recruiting in the population is that they didn't know that they could do this. And when we started talking to them and telling them that yes, they could do this, and we talked to them about what children that they would be interested in, what we were finding, of course anecdotally because we don't have any data, is that they were interested in sibling groups, they were interested in older kids, which is where we can't find, that's our hardest to place kids. So I really think that this is an untapped resource. And my recommendation to you would be is that there's several states that have actually signed the pledge, and Clark County, Nevada has signed the pledge, LA County, Alameda County, which is San Francisco, New Jersey, and then we're sort of teetering. So if you all are interested, I think that those are a lot of resources and that of people you can contact and talk to about what steps we've taken to start this initiative. And I wouldn't, and if you live in a state that, we all have communities that have gay and lesbian, large gay and lesbian populations. And so I wouldn't let that deter you from maybe some of your more conservative areas from going forward. I would highly recommend that if you are thinking about starting this initiative, that you look for somebody that is really going to work it, because I'll tell you, I've run into a lot of doors, slam doors, which actually isn't really so true. I mean, I think they've been cracked. So I think that this really takes somebody that's going to stick with it and is going to keep on pursuing it. The one great thing that's happened in New Mexico since we've started talking about it is we've had a training for foster parents around gay and lesbian children in their home. We've had a training on competency for our adoption workers. We're having another training, parts of other conferences, but we're having another training. So as we start to talk about it, I mean, I think the other issue is, what Sharon was talking about yesterday is this, one placement, last placement, that we're not moving kids. And one of the issues that we've found is that, families get a kid that starts coming out in their home and they call and they say, we don't want this kid. I mean, we've had disillusioned adoptions over children that are coming out. And so we need to do a better job at educating our parents that, this is a possibility that you may have a child that at age 4 isn't come out yet, but at 16 they may. So I think, I think we have a lot of work to do around educating our families about gay and lesbian issues and about recruiting gay, lesbian, bi, and transgender families. And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot about doing home studies for bisexual and transgender people. I mean, I don't think there's any of us in this room that maybe a couple that could easily do a home study for a bisexual or transgender person. So I think that this is a great initiative, and that I hope that when we come back next year that I have more to report to you and more great work that's happening in New Mexico. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, and Diane actually got me involved in this. Thanks, Diane. But seriously, if you have questions or if this is something that you think that your state may be able to take on, I'd be happy to talk to you about the things that we've done in New Mexico and the challenges that we've run into.
And I just want to add that the All Children, All Families initiative does provide technical assistance. They actually have a person, a consultant, that will call you, go over progress on the benchmarks, and offer some really great suggestions. They're also in the process of developing training. They came out to LA and observed our training, and they gave us some good tips. And they're doing something even more comprehensive than what we've done that we hope to be able to pilot the extra pieces. And they will be making that available to agencies that do make the pledge. So again, if anybody's interested, Jill and I, as well as the folks from the other agencies that have made the pledge, would be happy to assist. Okay, and with that, we'll turn it over to Chris. And we're saving questions till the end, just because we're a little bit short on time.
Thank you. Well, welcome, everyone. When Diane invited me to talk about religion and politics in Washington, D.C., 2 weeks before the presidential election, I thought she was a little crazy, but I certainly appreciate the invitation. Thank you very much, Diane. Often I try to start these events with a joke, and I think I met. Well, I didn't meet Angela, but I knew about her legacy in Arizona. About a year ago, I was invited to speak at the Arizona House of Representatives they had a faith recruitment event, and they had myself and Shane Salter and a very famous gentleman named Pastor W.C. Martin, who doubled the size of his congregation with adopted children in 4 years. Very wonderful story. In Texas, we got Texas here? All right. So I opened I tried to open the speech with a little joke. You know, it's a faith-based group. And I said, okay, so there's a Catholic priest, a Lutheran pastor, and a Jewish rabbi, and I got interrupted. And this rabbi in the audience says, Jewish rabbi, is there any other kind? So my joke didn't fly. I don't even think they remember the joke. They just remember him. But in light of that, I will go ahead and try one joke. There was a child welfare conference. It was in D.C. And at that conference, a county worker from a state and a state worker and a Fed all hit it off, and they really enjoyed spending time together. They did lunch or whatever, and they thought, hey, let's go down on vacation in Mexico. So that summer they went down to Mexico, and they had a good time. They were getting a little bit out of control, drinking a little bit too much, and they got thrown in jail. And so the magistrate says, we are going to make an example out of you. You're all going to the electric chair. So they were all befuddled. And the county worker gets up and gets strapped in the chair, and they ask her, are you a praying woman? And she says, oh, yeah. And they strap her all in, and they get ready to throw the switch, and she's praying, and then they say, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. And they throw the switch, and nothing happens. And they said, wow, your prayers have been answered. You're free to go. And so then they bring the state worker, and they sit her in the chair, and they say the same thing. Are you a praying woman? Oh, yes, oh, yes. And they strap her in, she prays, and then they say, are you ready? Yes. Throw the switch, and nothing happens. So lastly, they put the federal worker in the chair, and they say, just stay with me here. They say, are you a praying woman? And she says, no, but I do understand the law. And I know that if you don't plug that thing in over here, this thing is never going to work. But before we do that, I want you to call those two ladies and get them back in here and try again. Okay. Well, I know a lot of you know what you're getting into when you did this. For many of you who decide to major in that field or go in for your first interview in that field, however long ago it was, that you either were too naive or at some point you finally figured out this is hard work. It's a bit thankless. I get a lot of people will complain. You're going to have to be making tough decisions. You have to do a lot more paperwork and computer work than you ever imagined was even part of the job. Who here took a class in college on how to fix a copier? All right, but you've had to do it a million times, right? I know a little bit about that. I've got about 23 years of government service in my background. I know what the bureaucracy is like. I guess what I wanted to say, though, is thank you for your service. If you have not heard that from the outside community, maybe you hear that from each other, patting each other on the back. But I want to let you know that the community is appreciative. And our community in particular, this growing community I'm going to tell you about, is very pro-social worker. We don't let them do anything else. If discussions drift otherwise, we steer them back because we believe that you are all making life-changing decisions. And for you, in particular in the room, I know that all of you, knowing what you've known, have stepped up into management. And that comes with a lot of knowledge. You know what that's going to feel like when you get in that chair. And I just want to say thank you. That being said, I think I just want to encourage you that if you've ever wished that you had some help, if you've ever wished that there were some more resources that would come to you or come to the system that were perhaps less bureaucratic, more successful from people that really cared and were making good differences, then that's what I want to introduce you to today. There's a growing movement in the faith community. In particular, I'm going to just share with you about the Christian community because that's the community that I represent. And Colorado, I think, does it really well. They have the open door to any community, and we just represent the Christian response from the church of the entire state. But I think we've got some good results to share, and I hope we can generate some good questions. We'll talk a little bit about government and child welfare. Why is it, or how is it that they can work together? Project 127 in particular, the adoption track and the benefit of that. I think some of us are already in tune with that. How we do what we do. We only recruit, we only train and support. We don't do any certification. We're not an agency per se. We partner with agencies, so we're adding a piece to the puzzle. A little program that's been generated in Colorado called Portraits of Hope is partners with us that you might find interesting, a bit like the Heart Gallery. Some of our results and national results, and then open it up for questions. I have borrowed a little bit of the mission statement from the Colorado Department of Human Services. It, in part, it says that all children have a safe home and family. And if that can be part of their permanency goal, then if that can be achieved, then they're going to have success. But yet we knew, this number has changed over the past few years, but we've known that there's still children languishing, parental rights terminated in our state. Why? Why are they still sitting? And that shouldn't be so. In fact, in general, what my perception and our perception is that child welfare is basically geared to just basically keep up with the influx of children, and if they can keep up with that, they feel competent. But at the same time, they're not. I know you're all struggling with, can't we get to permanency? And I know many states are doing studies on this all the time, and they're coming up with a variety of different solutions. Many of them are better advertising. What do we need? We need more money. We need more people. We need better laws, more staff. What is it that we need? And yet, unless we fill all those gaps, we won't meet the entire problem. Basically, in Colorado, there's more kids coming in the system than there were resources to care for them. And that may be a similar problem. But from our viewpoint, and to be honest, the faith community came to the lieutenant governor in the state of Colorado in 2004. In fact, it was our pastor, Pastor Robert Gelinas. I have some resources from him if you're interested. But he met with the lieutenant governor and he said, "I've heard you got a problem." And she said, "Yes, I've got 875 children I can't find homes for." And he says, "Okay, we'll take them." And she says, "What?" She understood the system, and that was a pretty large statement to make. And she said, "How are you going to do that?" And he goes, "Well, don't get me wrong. My church alone will try to get 10%, but the rest of there should be enough churches in the state to cover all the difference." And she said, "Well, how are you going to get that done?" And he said, "I don't know. I'll get back to you." So he came back to our church and had an interest meeting. And remember, in the church, you have people from all different professions sitting in those pews. And he said, "Professionals, if you have an interest in this, if you have a skill, a desire, a passion, would you come to this meeting?" We met together, we talked about it. One thing led to another, and he pulled me aside, and he said, "Chris, would you be willing to run this ministry?" And I said, "Sure, is there any money in it?" He said, "No, there's nothing." So, and me with my brain damage at the time, I said, "Sure." And I suppose that was probably one of the decisions you've all come to grips with. I remember meeting in Nevada, and all the social workers for this training conference were meeting, and one said to the other, she goes, I know there's a waitress down at a pretty legitimate restaurant downtown Vegas. She's making more money than I am. But so from my viewpoint, I look at them and I go, you must be here for a different reason then. You must be here for a different reason. The faith community, they want to help. But why should we do that? I was attending a conference, and a speaker mentioned a quote from a gentleman named Jürgen Habermas. He's a political philosopher. He looks at democracy in a variety of different ways, and his viewpoint was democracy requires of its citizens qualities that it cannot provide. Okay, what that means is if you think of the pendulum, and there is a museum here with the original Star-Spangled Banner in D.C., and it has a circle, or it did back in 1976. That's the last time I saw it. But there's a circle of candles and has a big pendulum that's swinging all the time. And as the Earth turns, it knocks down new candles. Pretty interesting display. But I think of that when I think of, in America, the balance between the community or the church and the government. And that if the government holds everything, then we're not going to be able to solve our biggest community problems. And if the community tries to hold everything, that doesn't work either. In the American system, we have taxes, we have taxpayers, we have this huge city called Washington, D.C., and they would be very bored if we took all the power out of the government. So the balance is a pendulum that lies in between. How can we work together to help solve these problems? And the government can't even ask for the community to help. How many of you actually try to reach into the faith community or any community group in hopes of garnering a larger response for recruitment? How many? Great. I'm here to tell you that you should not have to raise your hand anymore, because I do not believe it's your responsibility to do that. I know that sounds very strange, but I want to let you know that there, in the church community, there is a growing effort, and it's accompanied by a lot of tears, because we are realizing that we have completely dropped the ball. We've expected the government to take care of all these kids with the minimal staff you have and solve all of our problems. And we have not lifted a finger in the church, and we are very sorry for that. I think what you should have is a very nice packet sitting on your desk, a nice big smile, and you should have a line of people walking in the door. Would you like that? Okay? That's what we're trying to do. We are actually getting to a point in the next few years where we want to overwhelm the system with qualified parents, with lots and lots of choices, so that instead of having waiting children and few parents to choose from, that you've got tons of parents ready to go. Let me just tell you an example of how that worked. Adams County, one of our partners, had a child born with fetal alcohol syndrome. She was preemie in the ICU. She was in a room with 4 other babies who had parents visiting them every day, and she had nobody. Every day it was just the nurse. And the county was recruiting amongst all their families, had no response. They finally called us, and they said, "Do you have anybody?" And within 24 hours, we had 11 families. Of those 11 families, 3 kind of came to the table. They knew the details. They either had experience or were willing to dive into fetal alcohol. And then the county had to choose between 3 families. Okay. On the other side of the fence, we had a 14-year-old who had been, he's in remission for his second bout with cancer. And he was coming out of it. He was feeling healthy. But over the years, he'd constantly told his GAL that, I just want a family, I just want a family, I just want a family. He's an African-American kid. For years, no response from the county. And in a particular church where we had previously done a lot of recruitment, we had a lot of parents sitting in the pews that had gone through classes. They were either close to certification or certified. So the pastor says to the congregation, "Hey, before I get started, let me tell you a story about Darius. He has no family that wants him. I need a family to step up." And out of that, we had 5 families step up for him. These are 5 more than ever stepped up before. And this is a little bit crazy, but the county, during the presentation, had Darius in the room, had his grandparents in the room, And they brought in 3 of those families all in the same room. They presented Darius's case. They reflected back, told them a little bit about themselves. And the county worker looked at Darius and said, and I know this is not usual, they said, "Darius, which one would you like?" And the beautiful thing about it is Darius said, "I want that one." And the other 2 families said, "And how can we help you?" All right, that's an example of very difficult placement with a lot of support. And I know it sounds strange, but those stories are growing and growing. So how do we work together? I think when we talk about the pendulum, some of the concern is that the church is trying to take over the state's trying to take over the church. There's a lot of historical models about how that works out. But I think there's a good equilibrium. Okay? Okay, real quick. Children have a lot of needs. If you look in one state, the government is involved with just a portion of their lives. They might be doing some after-school programs, working with other organizations, providing TANF issues or whatever. They're helping kids in a lot of different ways. Not all children have high needs. Our goal and hope is that most children are cared for competent adults, and we don't ever have to go into their homes. So they're up here in this area. And the church is also involved in children's lives. The church does a lot of the church stuff. And in children's issues, they're doing daycare, things like that. They may even be going overseas and helping with orphanages and things like that. The church also helps the government in some ways. They'll be involved in homeless initiatives, other social issues that they're involved with. But if we look at this area right here, there we go. I call that the sweet spot because that is where we all come together on the issue of foster care. And, of course, you can delineate that between all the various aspects of foster care. But really, that's where we're going. I think if we keep the circles pretty much where they are and they're not drifting towards or too far away, what I mentioned before is that the church has been way over here for a while in many of those aspects, and we want to help. I think we're a great resource. And when you have a good equilibrium like that, we can get a lot more success for a variety of issues in our community. And we can all work together. Okay, it took me an hour to make that slide. Oh, okay. Okay, pastor in Texas, and Bishop Aaron Blake said this when I had lunch with him several years ago over here in D.C. He was talking about working with one particular county worker, and he said, "You got the children and the law, and I got the families and the call." One of our trademarks with Project 127 is answering God's call to adoption, and we believe that this is better be a call for you because you're not here to go. You're not going to Walmart picking up your little child to fit in your little family. You need to understand you're giving your family to the child. And this is going to be hard at times. It doesn't mean you can't be successful, but you need to be called to do this. We feel it's a very unique call. So how do we recommend the government engages the faith community, and why? Well, county departments and faith-based communities, if they work together, we can solve these problems. We can remove some barriers through some collaborative efforts, create some opportunity, and promote awareness regarding the need for families. So it's you got a captive audience every Sunday. You can bring up these stories to these groups. And not only are we stepping up and trying to come to you, but we're inviting you to come into the church. So that's a little bit kind of greasing the skids for you to come on in. It'll improve child welfare's public image, not only with the faith community, but the community at large. I know you guys, a lot of bad press. I picked up the Post yesterday, and there's a pretty bad story about kids in a freezer. And I'll tell you what, that's hard. That's very, very hard. And I'm sure everybody felt like they got the ducks in a row, and they got those 3 sibs placed, and they brushed their hands off, and now years later something like that turns up, and they're looked at again. They're, the system is held accountable because of what woman did. And if we can generate some better success stories and we can be more positive with the people we work with, then they are telling the story in the community. They're more powerful than a newspaper, and your image gets better, and trust goes up. And I think that would help you, and maybe the government will decide to give you a raise too. Okay. You're getting to engage a larger number of people than have been engaged before, and that's key. You always want to add to that pool, and you'll see some numbers. I'll give you some hard numbers a little bit later. You may notice that on your slide, I do have copies of slides. You got several handouts. I'm going to have a couple more slides up here that I got some statistics late in the game. If any of you want the full show, then I can get that email to you. Just get my card. And in many the past two, there have been two studies in the state of Colorado, and both, at least the first one, recommended, hey, let's get into the faith community and get 1,000 new families. Well, I think that's a reasonable goal. Those two reports were the Strengthening Families Act in 2004 and Foster Care and Permanency Task Force. They both came out with about 16 recommendations. Of course, many are legislative, but a lot of them are, let's figure out ways to get into the faith-based and community organizations. They're an untapped resource. I find the church doesn't really remember this because it's been so long, but the church was social welfare about 100 years ago. There wasn't anybody else doing it, and they were pretty good at it. They learned a lot of stuff, and but there were still a lot of gaps in knowledge. And I think in the past 100 years, a lot of knowledge has been built and understood and developed and incorporated in our education system. And I think we know a lot more now. But as that was happening, the church kind of backed off and quit understanding those issues, quit their engagement, so to speak, of how they felt about that. But when we can tap back into that, I think that helps them. They already have strong family and community bases intact. You know, if I could hypothetically address that story in the Post yesterday, I would say that mom imploded for some reason, and what if she had community that lasted for years and years and years that would help her constantly reflect and give her relief or help her to get into some mental health issues. You know, we can't leave people untethered with tough kids, and I don't think the government. You can't serve them for their entire lifespan. You shouldn't have to, and that's something the community should be doing and helping each other. There's other examples out there, and we'll talk about other states. It's also very cost effective. One of the things that we are is, I'll tell you about Project 127 in a second, but we charge our families $50 for our services. So we already understand that adopting out of foster care is basically free. We want to offer them a service. We would do it for free because we're just being blessed with enough funds to be able to do that. But if you give something to someone for completely free, then there's a lot of other problems. So we get them to write something out of their checkbook. But overall, we broadcasted it costs us about $5,000 to help with an assisted placement. We don't obviously do the placements, but we kind of break it down in that factor. And we're actually so lean right now, we're at 2,500. That the number's fluctuating, but it's pretty good, 2,500. So how does the state of Colorado do it? Here's what they did. Colorado put together, Sharon Ford invited us to the table and said, and they put together this logo, the Colorado Faith-Based Community Collaborative. And this is one of their new products that they're putting up at different events. Children need loving home with purpose and faith. We invite faith communities to join us in finding loving, caring homes for children in foster care or needing a forever family. And we've got all the symbols up there. And basically the premise is you're all invited to the table. organize. We'll give you as much resources as we can. Project 127 is an example of all the collaborative and resourceful outcomes that they've developed that we've done in concert with one another, and they're available to any other group. So, in short, the state is bearing the burden of interfaith. They've not established a separate office to deal with interfaith. They didn't have to do that. They just invite everybody to the table. They've had to overcome some barriers, which are there. Separation of church and state is an issue on both sides of the wall. Okay? We're addressing our side of the wall. We're saying, you know, churches, you guys need to work with government. Quit being so afraid. Work through these issues. We'll go there with you. And on the government end of it, we're saying, look, they're not a bunch of kooks. We're trying to screen out the kooks. We get some kooks. Okay? But our effort is we try to screen those out so that when they finally come to your table, that they have a good understanding of what they're into or getting involved in. If we have personal bias, and all of us may have a certain amount of personal bias, then we need to look at, well, what's the reality? What's the real understanding of these issues? And are these particular families good? So, for instance, Denver County, are one of the largest counties in Colorado, mentioned they said in a public forum that they were concerned about working with a faith-based group at first, but they decided to take the risk, and they just kind of slowly worked into it, and they found that over the course of the first year that they're very impressed with the quality of the families and are continuing to enjoy working with us. So, you know, we don't push counties or CPAs to work with us. They take their time, and we want them to see results. Obviously, we expect you to still adhere to the law. Everybody's going through the same certification process. You're still making appropriate placements. If you're looking at children who have expressed certain feelings about their faith and it doesn't match up with our particular group, then you look for different matches or whatever the case may be. So we understand that. From our viewpoint, we want to pride ourselves on taking any child, because every child deserves a chance. So in some ways, the community, we really want to distinguish ourselves from the community by saying we'll take them all. And if the communities are ready, you know they're discriminating on who they're too troubled, too tall, too short. They lie, they steal, they wet their bed, don't want them. We don't want our families to be that. We're really working them through to be open to anything. And that's hard. There's a lot of those issues. So that's why it has to be a calling. We do really stress that it's important for all the organizations coming to the faith table to be able to retain their uniqueness. It's what gives them their strength. It's what gives them their backbone. And as long as the state is not pushing us to water that down, then I think we can be powerful and we can be very effective in that area. So as long as the state retains the model for receiving the different faith groups, I think that really helps solve that problem. We don't believe in coercion, just exposure. We will expose them to our faith, and we understand and respect the needs and expressed values and from the children. So we try to be very sensitive to that. We think that if our families can be treated equal, then you will have a lot more options. Okay, briefly, some distinctives for a Christian parent. There was a book produced several years ago. It was about this thick, and it talked about, it was written for child welfare workers, and it was how to work with people of different faiths. And you need to understand a couple of their tenets, what they believe, kind of what their worldview is, because that helps you speak to them. First of all, overall, they believe that everybody's messed up, not just these kids. We're all capable of evil acts. We're all capable of doing some horrible things. So that means that we need to be tethered. We need to be tethered to our community to keep us weighed down. We need to be taking care of ourselves. We need some help. We need some outside help. We're taught that we're all equal, that the child that I may be adopting may someday be changing my diapers. You know what I'm saying? Or they may be the president of the United States. I may be working for my son someday. I don't know. All I know is that my house is filled with possibilities. Right now, I'm having to keep that under control. My wife is doing all that right now, but they're all filled with possibilities. Any one of them could have been aborted. Any one of them could have not had a chance to live and make a difference. And I'm seeing their character and their desires come out, and they could do some wonderful things. My father spent time in foster care, and change was made in his life, and he was given some hope. And because of that gave me strength. And I want my kids to even have triple that, have opportunities. As a Christian, we all believe that we have received undeserved help. So that's like unconditional love. We've given it. For whatever reason, we feel that God has just basically decided on his own that he would like to love us, and it's made huge changes in our life. While we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. So while we're in the middle of it, he still reached for us. And for the Christian, that makes a lot of sense for adoption, because that's exactly what we're doing for these children. This child has not raised enough money to pick a parent. They haven't, gotten the job or all the skills or whatnot to earn our respect or admiration or desire to get them. We're reaching for them on our own. These parents, they feel forgiven, and that's one of the prime motivators, that if I can be forgiven, then I should be freely able to forgive. I forgive my children, I forgive those people around me, and by the way, that's a great skill to offer a new adopted child. Here's a big issue, transparency, and many of you may not be used to this. We just had a discussion in our staff meeting the other day that our county, our staff worker will meet with a county rep and discuss for the 14 or 15 families that we have with that county right now. And they'll say, we need to talk about something. A lot of your parents are coming up, and they're meeting with us, and they are laying it out. Guys are saying they're having trouble with pornography. Parents are saying, yeah, we had some marriage issues. I struggle with anger, or they'll say, I've got this or that. And the workers are like, what? Because those are huge red flags, right? But I think what I'm seeing is that a lot of times it may be possible that the majority of the population who comes to help you as a resource family may not lay that stuff on the table at the beginning, but somewhere down the line during the research, you find out, or you hear something and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And you find out after the fact. And when you find it after the fact, there's two problems. One is the problem, and two, how come you didn't tell me? And so it's usually very negative at that point in the game. What our parents, what I'm trying to tell you is that in the Christian community, it's based on accountability. It's based off that they meet regularly and that they're laying themselves out and being transparent with their group. They will want to do the same with you. And they know that comes at great risk, because you may say no. And some of the counties say no. We try to encourage them to talk about that to us ahead of time, because I think our viewpoint is we're trying to mimic how you all feel, and that is we're not looking for perfect parents. You're looking for parents who know how to run into issues, have gotten better, and know how to reach for help, because you're going to do a lot of that when you bring these kids in. It'll stretch your marriage. It'll stretch all your stress points. And if you don't know how to reach for help, then you're more dangerous than the Superman who comes and says, I can conquer the world. So the broken are coming to you knowing and feeling that they can help the broken. And so you may have to look at their weaknesses and still make good judgments. But I think you're going to see some more transparent people coming your way. They want to give back. They feel a desire to give back to the community. Some are led in a lot of different directions, but this in adoption is one particular way. And we took a survey from my parents. Are you bringing in these kids because you want to evangelize them? Okay, everybody wants to know that question, right? All right, ABC News asked me that question, and they didn't prep me for it or anything like that. But what I know is over 90% of our families came back and said, no, we feel like we're being called to serve. We're being called to give of ourselves to love these kids. And if through the exposure that they decide to follow the same faith as us, then they can do that. But their main concern is to love these kids. So that being said, this is one of the key verses about the call. A lot of people have frustrations about religion, but in essence, this one brings it straight home for me. And what is real religion? Is it going to church every day or every Sunday? Is it going to church every Sunday and Wednesday, every Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Thursday? You know, what is it? Is it tithing all the time? Is it writing the check to sponsor the child in Africa? Is it going to Mass? Is it taking communion? What is it? And God was very clear. This is one of the first commandments in our New Testament of what a Christian should do. It has nothing to do with being a great singer in the choir. Okay? It says, get out of the church and go help the community. Reach for the least of these, starting with the orphan. So you will find that this is the common verse amongst all these efforts, nation and worldwide, that we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, briefly about the whole Christian community. How is it different? Obviously, some of you already know this, but they tend to have bigger families. Some are way too big. I know I have a lot of... What Diane doesn't know is I have 6 children and 2 grandchildren, all through adoption, and they are all living with us. Okay? Now, that being said, that is not what I'm advocating. It is not what we advocate for our families. We're basically saying just take one. If you can just take one, then you'll be doing a wonderful thing. However, it is beautiful that most of our families are taking close to 2 SIBs for each family. Pretty close. It's somewhere around 1.62 to 1.75, something like that. But that's pretty good. We're keeping SIBs together. But I'm not asking them to have 8 or 9 or 10 kids. But get this, some of them are coming back a year later and saying we want to do this again because we had such a good experience. Isn't that nice? That says a lot about what you've done. And then, and some of them are serving broken families in their community before they go to social services. They're opening themselves up and doing that. That's huge. There is a homeschool culture, and we tell our families, keep in mind you can't homeschool your kids while they're under the guardianship of the state. And they're opening their eyes to that. And they go, okay, what would that look like? What's an IEP and how that works? Church communities, some are close, some are not. Predominantly the ones who are not are the white communities. So I like to go in the churches and I say, you need to be able to get in each other's business. And you need to start right now. And you need to ask for help now before you get the kids and afterwards. So don't be afraid to do that. They can be, and they are opening up to counseling. They just want a counselor that understands their values. Corporal punishment, obviously a big issue, and it is our chance to say, I know you've used that in the past with your other kids, but guess what? Your tool shed has about 20 open spaces that you haven't filled yet. How would you like to know about all these other new things? And then we educate them not only that you don't do corporal punishment, but why, and why it's not appropriate now, and why it won't be appropriate later. And that's okay. And I think when we get a chance to reach into that they understand that, and they like applying new tools. They do believe in the importance of spiritual education, so that, like I said, they will expose children to their faith. They understand adoption more than they understand foster care, okay? It means I'm committed to you for life. It's not I'm going on vacation, see ya, or I'm done, or the county can't pay me anymore, so you're out of here. Most of them don't even know what their benefits are either through the federal government or subsidy-wise up front. That's not something we stress. It's something that's offered to them in hindsight that helps them, but they're not doing it for the money. We have professionals from every skill set sitting in the pews, and we have Democrats and Republicans and all the stuff in between. Okay?
140 million all around the world, and the number is growing. A lost generation, without hope, without a future. They are orphans. In the United States, we don't have orphanages. Our 120,000 orphans are hidden in a system called foster care. It's meant to be a temporary fix. But for too many, the state becomes their pseudo-parent for years on end. Children are shuffled from foster home to foster home. Eventually, they age out of the system, a strange sort of graduation. For some, the next stop is homelessness or jail. 70% of our prison inmates spent time in the foster care system. Right now, there are approximately 800 children legally free for adoption in Colorado. Imagine what Colorado would look like if we could find forever families for these children before it is too late. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Chris Padbury is an adoptive parent and the executive director of Project 127.
Ever since we became involved in adoption, it was obvious to us that we had never heard a sermon on James 1:27 where the emphasis was on the word orphan as opposed to the other items in that verse. And we prayed that we would someday meet a pastor who would preach on that and motivate just one church to step up and adopt a lot of kids.
It all started when Pastor Robert Gelinas preached from the book of James and called on his church to do something about the orphans in Colorado.
But the body of Christ needs to come together to make sure that there are no children waiting for homes in Colorado. It is a travesty that we have kids waiting for homes in our own backyard. That should never be the case when there's the Church of Jesus Christ here.
Pastor Robert, who is also an adoptive parent, initiated meetings with government officials. As things progressed, even the state officials became excited about the possibilities.
You've now been given permission by the Lieutenant Governor's office to work with church. My executive director is saying, you can work with church. The church is saying, I want to work with government. We want to make a difference for kids. This is going to happen.
Project 127 does what the state cannot do.
In particular, they need help recruiting brand new qualified families that want to bring in kids. And then, in addition, they need support. These families need support.
After 15 years of marriage, Vic and Catherine Davison were ready for adoption.
Then we heard about Project 127, and we thought, we gave everything else a shot. Let's see what Project 127 can do for us.
And that it was a faith-based program.
Yeah, Christian-based.
It just made it that much more enticing.
Soon, they were on track to be connected with a child needing a home. Then their caseworker matched them with not one, but 3 children.
When we first met the kids, Emilio was 6.
So I was 4.
And
Leanna wasn't even 2.
Wasn't even 2 yet. She was
like
23 months or something like that.
Well, they're all completely different, and they have very different personalities, and we're just loving getting to know them and their personalities.
Mom and Dad too.
Is that Mama?
I just want to thank God for these 3 kids in my life. This
Absolutely.
is the biggest blessing that I've ever had and probably will ever have.
Each of the 64 counties in Colorado has different adoption paperwork and training requirements. However, the counties that work with Project 127 have agreed to standardize that process. Adoptive parent training is certified by the state and conducted in a church setting.
I think it's been really great because the training is coming from both a secular way of thinking and a spiritual Christian way of thinking. on all aspects of child rearing that you may not have thought about, different ways of coping with attachment issues and disciplining.
We have two boys, 6 and 5 right now, so we're just kind of looking for some completeness, and we're excited of embarking on this ministry. We see it as a family ministry.
And children in foster care need ministry.
They're basically taught, don't get close to people because you may never see them again. These kids are broken. What they need is a consistent, solid home that will teach them that yes, we will endure problems, you will not have to leave, and that relationship is safe. You can invest and trust me, and that I will trust you.
Forever families are very special people. They're people who have room in their hearts and room in their homes for a child that they didn't give birth to, but they're willing to step up to the plate and do something that's not necessarily heroic, but something that's so special, that's so tender, that says, you know, you aren't mine, but you're mine in my heart.
Still, no matter how special these parents are, they can't go it alone. Project 127's support involves the whole church, so parents have somewhere to turn. In addition to being an adoptive parent, Carolyn Smith is on the Project 127 support team.
We volunteer and come right alongside of a family and give them the emotional support, encouragement. We're kind of their mentors through this whole process, and anything they need, they can come through us, any doubts, whatever, we're here to support them going through this whole process from start to finish and even beyond, and be part of their family if they allow us to do that.
Project 127 was birthed by one church, but its vision is much broader. To see churches from all over Colorado join hands to provide forever homes for orphans. Recruiting pastors to catch the vision of adoption is a priority.
Project 127 has opened the door for our people to not only see a need, but have a tangible avenue to meet a need in a way that is, I think, truly glorifying and honoring our Father in a way that true religion intended. But we've seen numerous churches that took just a select small few in their church, changed the entire heartbeat of their church because God was able to move through the heartbeat and the passion of just a few.
Corey and his wife Heather have one daughter, Hannah. They also adopted two brothers from foster care, Carter and Seth.
When we started the process, Hannah was 3.5, 4 years old, and just always asking Mommy, can I get a brother? Can I get a sister?
And then we get these two great little boys with just the brightest eyes and the biggest smiles. And then, and then we hear the news that, okay, they're not as perfect as you think they are, but
physically. But they are so ours.
Yeah, they fit right in.
I tell our partner churches, here's a litmus test for you. If an orphan in your city, in your neighborhood, can point to your church, point to its people, and say, I know that God is real in that church because they've taken care of me, or they took care of one of my friends. It's real. If your church can say that they've made an impact on adoption, then you know that you've been fulfilling God's command.
It won't be easy, but let's do it. Let's work together. Let's see if we can do this thing on behalf of kids.
This is about giving children who have fallen through the cracks a new life, a new chance, maybe the first chance to dream.
When I grow up, I am going to be a famous gymnast, and I'm going to be on TV and win lots of medals and stuff. I would want to be a person who flies planes. I want to be someone who takes care of horses who are sick or broken down or who have no mothers.
And for once, dreams can become reality.
You know, by God's grace, by churches working together, we will see no children waiting for homes in Colorado. That's the goal behind Project 127. Everything is designed around that.
a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families.
Project 127.
Our goal is that there be no waiting children in Colorado foster care by 2014. We're actually ahead of schedule. When we started the program, there's 875 kids that were legally free, waiting for adoption, and today there's only 700-ish. Sharon runs that number back and forth, but of course, in our first 3.5 years, well, I'll tell you that in a second. This is what we do. We produce successful adoptions between two key people groups, Christians and churches, and children in Colorado foster care system. So we don't do any international adoption. We don't specifically recruit for foster families, although some of our families, once they're joined in the system, they offer themselves to foster, which is great. Likewise, because of logistics, we just don't serve a very large population. We serve a very key population. And by doing that, I think we're more effective. We only recruit, train, and support, and we do that for all the people that we have involved. For adoptive families and support team members, we actually have training for people who want to support adoptive families. We train both individuals and entire church organizations. We have great relationships with our counties and CPAs, and we have sponsors that help fund our program. We believe that a complete and competent child welfare should look like another big piece of the puzzle, which includes direct adoption. There's already foster care, obviously reunification, foster adopt, kinship care. There's a lot of variety of permanency targets, but we understand the general philosophy of the system is foster with adoption that may occur, and you get a lot of adoptions that do occur out of foster families, which is good. But what if you also had a huge piece of pie of families come together and they're directly targeting adoption? I think that can help complete that puzzle. We have a number of county and CPA partners. So we're working with the county governments and actual child placement agencies. In short, a family can come to us and feel like that we're going to address care for them from their Christian background. And then they go to whatever agency they want, and that the burden is not on you to do that. I mean, you can speak to that if you want, or you cannot speak to that, but the point is that they're getting served in that area, and that your job is much simpler. You're basically getting a huge packet of information from them. All that stuff has been hunted down and tracked down. It's already given to you. They've been screened, and your job is to make a very objective legal assessment of that family. And in short, when we enter an agreement, and it's not a contract because our counties don't like the word contract because it involves money. We don't do money back and forth. Is that okay? We don't. Right now, we don't ask for money. I wish we had money, but okay. We've been providing our service to the state of Colorado for free for almost 4 years. So when we go to them, we say, okay, so-and-so county, would it be okay if we did an orientation in a church and that person who attends that would meet your orientation needs? Now, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't want to meet with them on the side and tell them specifics about how your county works, but the generalities we cover in the orientation. People loved coming to orientation in a church. It's just more comfortable for them. We also do all the standardized qualification training in a church. So we have qualified personnel therapists, social workers who come in. We contract with them, and they teach our training. And we don't let them out the door unless they have a total of 38 plus hours, and the state only requires 27. We've also standardized the application process and all the forms, so all of our partners accept the same form. And I know that Colorado is already progressing in that area, but our families, in my view, have that advantage. We do pre-screen the families. We only get 1 hour of credit for screening, or they call it supervision of the family. We probably do many hours, but conservatively 1 hour is good. And we prepare their packet, and we have a complete copy of all their paperwork. Okay, so we can turn that around in 24 hours if any of it's lost. So that helps you out. And then we just ask each of those organizations to accept all the above. That's what an agreement with Project 127 is. We recruit all the groups that I mentioned before. Churches, counties, and sponsors. Churches have the inspired families, passionate pastors that call them to do that. They've got support teams and resources. Counties, you're the legal guardians, or the government is a legal guardian. You're willing to participate and even share resources with us and other counties. There's already a lot of laws in the books that say you should be sharing amongst each other in state. And what we do, what we like to say we do, is we help you do that, because we know that's kind of a difficult process to do. Sponsors, there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of passion for kids but don't want to adopt them, or have, well, they may not want to have anything to do with them physically, but they do want to support the effort. There's a lot of organizations that are giving goods and services, and when there's one central organization that they can do that to, that's very attractive because they know it'll be dispersed appropriately. And we have lots of partnerships as well. So we partner with Adoption Exchange, Post-Adoption Resource Center, and a lot of other great organizations that are growing in Colorado. Like I said before, we train adoptive families, support teams, and churches. I'll just highlight one item on here, and that's the PURE team. It's taken from the James 1:27 verse, but it means prayer, encouragement, or prayer, understanding, relationship, and encouragement. And it's basically giving, for 2.5 to 3 hours, we train people how to practically support a family. Not, I have no idea what you're going through, I'll pray for you, and you stay over there, I'll stay over here, but they're actually getting involved. And that's a potential resource even for a family in the future. We support our families on a variety of different venues. One is the office. We have a full-time staff office. Each of my caseworkers manage 80 families apiece. Okay? Now, granted, we're not doing all the things that you're doing. We're actually doing the things that you don't do or can't do. So we're kind of feel like that's manageable because we're adding support. We're not replacing anybody's support. We're adding. And so our parents are able to, they filter their aggression and frustrations and anger at us, and we help them understand what your words really mean, and that the game's not over, and how to approach you. And one of our mantras is, if someone is offended in the process, the adoption won't happen. So we know that our parents can get offended, and we know that you can get offended. So if we can keep everybody at the same table, that'd be good. We match up all those donated resources with the families, and we have lots of group events, and we're recently launching a new training program where we're training entire churches how to do this, all to support the adoptive family. So here are our results. We started in January of 2005. To date, this is as recent as I can get it, and some of these numbers are constantly changing, but we've had 293 families step forward. And even though a family stalls or stops, we still retain them. So they can still come back and help later. Even though a family already adopts, they still come back, which is good. We've had 138 children placed in 85 homes. We have 124 churches, 56 cities, 51 finalizations. Before the end of November, we'll have 13 more. We actually expect that we could have somewhere between, well, in our first 3.5 years, we had 50 adoptions. In this year alone, we could have another 50 to 100. And remember, there's only 700 waiting. So we're growing exponentially every year. technically we don't place, but we're as we look at the statistics, we're ahead of 48 of the 64 counties. I think it's a little bit higher. Not ahead per se because we're actually helping them, but that's how much we're adding to the system. In fact, if we see as many adoptions as we think we might see, we'll add 10% to all the adoptions this coming year. This is a graph I'm just playing with. They're not hard, fast numbers, but they're based off of some assumptions. But the general assumption is that the number of children coming in the system is outweighing the number of children coming out every year. And we're just talking about adoption. And if that's been true, the key number, the green up there, is normal adoptions. Of course, adoptions are happening every year anyway, but it's just not enough. It has to be a higher rate. So when we started in 2005 or 2006, we started cutting down on that. And this is actually also a depiction of an 18-year-old who comes in the system in 91, and will not be in the system for sure by 2014. I know there's a lot of variables. I know some kids are better suited for residential care. I know some kids don't want to be adopted, but our goal is to provide enough parents that could be willing to take every child. So wouldn't it be nice if you had that option? This is a Portraits of Hope program. It was one church went to their local county, said, "Can we take pictures of the kids just in our county?" And we'll take them to churches all over our county. They've displayed 47 kids, and 36 of them have been in placements of some type. And this is just what they look like real quick. So it's a mini heart gallery, but I think it's very effective. They found homes for virtually every one of these kids. And you'll notice that these are SIBs on the bottom right, too. Okay. It's a new movement nationally. Obviously, the national implications is that churches are understanding that this is something different. It's not a traditional adoption. It's not even how traditional adoption has even occurred in the past through foster care. It's different. It's not an agency model. It's a ministry model, which makes it dramatically cheaper and also dramatically broader, because we see the bulk of the work is happening in churches, not in an organization. I can't serve every kid. I've tried. Okay, I cannot serve every kid in the system. I can't save the world, but if we can empower those communities out there to do it, then that'll work. We have slowly maturing families. They're beginning to understand the issues. They're taking an average of 4-year-olds right now. On National Adoption Day, we'll be adopting our oldest kid so far. He'll be 15 on that day. So we know that we're progressing into older age groups and the higher needs. And families are understanding the implications of attachment disorder and all the other diagnoses. So it's a shift in thinking. Right now we've got many states. One of the handouts I gave you is a list of 22 states that have inquired that will be attending our national systems conference in January. If you want more information about that systems conference, you would be welcome to attend. We detail some of what you've seen here, but it'll be much more detailed. For instance, in California, I know Diane may be familiar with his children. Again, I can give this information to you, but they have a great program. 450 people already attending their seminars. They've already got 4 kids placed, and they're only a year old. In Texas, there's a program called Tapestry with Michael and Amy Monroe. They have large events where they're serving adoptive families and their children. So last year they served 550 kids, and this year they're looking at 540 and 220 kids. They trained 235 families. In Kansas, it's called Child's Hope. Their vision is no waiting children in Kansas foster care. They have about 900. They've already finished their first adoption. 100 people supporting, 27 families placed with 57 kids. Arkansas, the call is probably the most senior behind us. They've got 135 active families, 75 children placed. They have up to 10 children that could be finalized total in the next few months. And the state of Arkansas commissioned a report on the call that with only 6 months of operation, and they were able to kind of delineate what their strengths and weaknesses are. So there's some good information there. And lastly, 4 Kids of South Florida. They serve children on every end of the spectrum. They even serve families trying to stay together, all the way through kids transitioning. They're the most senior program I know of in the entire country. And they serve every kid who comes in the system. And they're housed in their child welfare office in Florida. Okay, lastly, everybody loves this monument. Okay, what is it? The Washington Monument. Well, guess what? Lincoln, during his presidency, saw this, his entire presidency. For 20 years, it stalled. It didn't seem, there was even question if it would be finished at all. Even at his death, this is what it looked like. He would see that outside his window from the White House every single day. And it's a big what if, what if, what if. Foster care has only been around 80, maybe close to 100 years in the U.S. Okay, that's not very long. And we've accepted where we are. We've accepted the trends. And I know a lot of you are hopeful that may not change, or you're hopeful that it could change. And I just want to let you know that we are a piece of the puzzle that can help this dream come true. That's it. Go ahead, question.
I think you answered it, but my question was, as many of us have gone through our federal reviews and seen how poorly we've done on placement stability, I'm wondering, well, at least New Mexico, I'm wondering if you all are looking at concurrent planning families, because I think there's a real push for, one placement and that's it. And your model, I think, isn't necessarily getting us there. So I'm just wondering if you are encouraging families to be concurrent planning families.
Yes, concurrent or foster adopt, or however it's referred to, about 30 to 40% of our families actually are pursuing legal risk children, concurrent children, because the process is the same, the support's the same, everything looks the same. And of course they come to me and say, oh, the worst thing that could happen is I get a child and it has to be taken away. And I said, yeah, but that's how everybody else in the world feels. So reach for that child, love them as if they're your own, knowing that they may not be able to stay with you. And we work with them through that process. We've had a lot of families that have had their children taken, and then they're able to stay in the game because they're supported. And the beauty is they feel like they made an impact on that child. So if anybody knows Shane Salter, one of his foster placements was a huge, huge positive impact in his life, even though they didn't adopt him. So I agree with you. Concurrent planning is important, and we serve it.